You know, when history and the so-called experts look back on this past offseason, they are going to say that not only was the Desean Jackson trade back to the Eagles the most underrated move all offseason, but it was the most important. And not one player, not even Le'Veon Bell, was as important to his team as Desean Jackson is to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Kick the red, double move on the red.
You're my Lou, King Thing by here, and I hope everybody's having a great day. And oh man, dude, I gotta tell you, this thing I've been growing, I don't know how many days it has left. Look at it. Look how scruffy it is. I look like a lumberjack. Give me an axe. I'm gonna go chop a tree. That's how I feel. I don't know, man. You know, I've been growing. I don't know if I can take much more. I'm kind of getting a little sick of it, but I can't tell my wife because I don't want her to know that. So I'm forced almost to have to grow it just to get on her nerves. You know what I mean? And she is trying to get me to shave it. She is trying to engage me in all sorts of like bets and stuff. You know what I mean? But I don't want to tell her like, yeah, dude, I might have to shave it. You know what I mean? Hopefully she don't watch this, otherwise she's really gonna start pushing. But man, look how scruffy it is. I just really noticed it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do I keep it? Do I get rid of it? What the hell do I do? Anyways, we are getting closer to camp one day closer. Today is another day. I am so ready for football. I can't wait. I cannot wait. You know what I mean? And today, I want to talk to you guys about something that I read earlier this morning. It was an article talking about the top 10 most important players to their team. And these were guys who aren't necessarily the quarterbacks of the team. They're not necessarily the big name stars, but the other guys, the guys like in a tier just below that, guys who could be contributing, maybe, you know, number 2 wide receivers, a linebacker, or maybe a defensive tackle, people who aren't necessarily the quarterback stars or the number 1 best player, you know, on the field. And I thought it was a very interesting article. And one of the guys that was in it was Desean Jackson. He was rated number 10, okay? He was rated number 10. I actually think Desean Jackson should be much higher than 10. So in this video, I'm obviously not going to talk about Carson Wentz, Fletcher Cox, because we all know it's obvious. They have to produce if we're going to be successful this year, okay? What I'm talking about is I'm talking about the guys who are most important that complement Carson Wentz, that complement Fletcher Cox, the guys around them that have to be good for this Eagles team to take the next step. Those are the guys that I want to talk about in this video. And when we talk about the Eagles offense, when we talk about what can take the Eagles offense to the next level, we got to think back a year ago. Let's think about a year ago to the beginning of the season when the Eagles had no Mike Wallace. They had no Alshon Jeffrey for the first 3 weeks. And they were playing games with Kamar Aiken. They bring Jordan Matthews, you know, off the streets, and they sign him. They put Aguilar on the outside. And the offense, they really weren't that great, and they weren't that effective in the pass game. This is another thing that my man Mark Holmes, shout out to him, misses about Carson Wentz playing his first game against Indy. He had nobody on the outside. They were hurt. They were banged up, okay? They didn't get Alshon back to the Titans game. So the Eagles, they were banged up. They get Alshon Jeffrey back last year. And one of the things that they never really got and they never really had was that deep threat. The guy on the outside who could stretch the field, keep defenses honest, and have them play back. They never had that, okay? The year before, they had Torrey Smith, who I wasn't a big Torrey Smith fan, but he was fast enough still that he commanded respect from the defenses, and it was just enough to open some things up. But now, the Eagles go up in the offseason. They trade for Desean Jackson, who in my opinion is got to be a top 2 to 3 best deep threat in football right now. Even at 32, the guy has tremendous speed still. We've heard things all season, all spring and mini camps and OTs, how fast Desean Jackson still is. He's still a burner, okay? And we know this. And last year he averaged most yards per catch, which was like 19, okay? So he is still a legitimate deep threat. And when you add Desean Jackson to this offense, I seriously think he makes this a dynamic special offense over just being a really good offense. The addition to Desean Jackson, I think, is single-handedly the biggest, most valuable move that any team could have done this offseason to upgrade their offense. I think that the acquisition of Desean Jackson was single-handedly the most impactful move a team could make this offseason. Now, we know the Jets went out and they signed Le'Veon Bell, and he's very important to them. So I will put this right up there with that Le'Veon Bell signing, because I think Desean Jackson changes the Eagles' offense from a very good offense to an elite, dynamic offense. And you can't play the Eagles the same way you played them last year. You can't bring the safeties up as much. You can't press Desean Jackson as much. If you want to go out there and not respect Desean Jackson's speed because he's 32, you're going to get killed. You're going to get killed. He's going to destroy you. And the truth is, if you guys even remember when Desean Jackson was with us during his first stint, you remember when we lost him, and then you would go back and they would show the film reviews of how teams played the Eagles with Desean Jackson on the field and then when he left. And it was completely different. And to have Desean Jackson on that outside is going to force teams to play back. Now your offense is going to have more room to work for everybody else. Your tight ends are going to be more effective. Your slot wide receiver Nelson Aguilar is going to be more effective. Alshon on the other side is going to be more effective. The running game is going to be more effective. And this was a huge move for the Eagles. I really think a lot of people don't understand how important of a move the Desean Jackson trade was. I think a lot of Eagle fans know, but I think a lot of other teams, other rivals, they don't understand it. They dismiss it as, oh, they just brought in a 32-year-old guy. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. Desean Jackson makes the Eagles a dynamic, elite-level offense. And I think they're going to put close to 30 points per game. And that's why I think Desean Jackson is the most important guy on offense other than Carson Wentz. I think he's that important to the Philadelphia Eagles in 2019. We need Desean Jackson on the field. And if he's on the field, this offense is going to be on another level. On another level. Now, believe me, when I say this, I am not saying it lightly. I understand the impact of Jordan Howard, of a Miles Sanders, of Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Jason Peters being healthy, Zach Ertz, Alshon, Nelson Aguilar. I understand that it's important for those guys to be on the field and to play. They are important to this team. But seriously, nobody changes the way a defense approaches the whole offense like Desean Jackson does. He changes everything. Just his presence changes the whole way a defense thinks about playing you. Okay, he is that impactful. And I've been complaining about the Eagles having a legitimate deep threat like Desean Jackson. I was just fortunate enough for them to get Desean Jackson because that's what they needed to be an elite level offense. And that's what they are going to be this year. Nobody, in my opinion, is more important to the Eagles' offense, besides Carson Wentz, like Desean Jackson is. Desean Jackson is the most important guy playing with Carson Wentz, in my opinion, next year. Now, when it comes to the defense, obviously, I'm not going to include Fletcher Cox, Malcolm Jenkins, because I look at those guys like stars, okay? But besides those guys, who are the most important guys for the Eagles on defense this year? And I was thinking about this for a while, and I was thinking about what is the Eagles' defense predicated on? What is the most important thing to them? And it's simple. Get pressure on the quarterback. The Eagles rely on pressure on the quarterback from their defensive line because they don't blitz a lot. I was just reading an article, I'll put the link in the description, in Bleeding Green Nation. It was talking about Jim Schwartz and his blitzes, and it was talking about him really not being a big blitzer, okay? And when he does blitz, I think they were saying 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 4, something like that, was his most successful blitzes was in that situation where it's like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6, okay? But the Eagles really don't blitz that much. I personally wish they would blitz a lot more. I really do. I'm a big believer in the blitz, but they don't. And when they don't blitz, you're going to put pressure on your defensive line to get to the quarterback. They got to get to the quarterback, okay? So the Eagles like to use a rotation in the defensive line. They like to keep these guys fresh, okay? So when I was thinking about who's the most important player on defense besides Fletcher Cox and Malcolm James, who's the other guy? I really think that there's two guys that have to have good years this year. Two guys. The first guy, Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett has to have a big year. Okay, he was the 14th overall pick. He was having a great second year before his injury. He's coming back this year, and I believe he's going to have double-digit sacks. And if he gets double-digit sacks, it's going to mean this defense is playing really, really good. Okay, so Derek Barnett is really important. Now, it wasn't just him. There was one other guy I think that has to step up this year, and that is Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham, okay, he is not going to get you double-digit sacks. He's never had it in his career. But he does so many other things good, okay? His sacks, he may not get a lot of sacks, but look at the timing of things like his sacks and forced fumbles that he gets. You can't get a more clutch pass rusher than him. He gets a lot of it. He plays the run fantastic. But if you look at last year, I think it was an off year for him. He was hurt after the Super Bowl. I think he had surgeries. He just never really got going till late in the year. I think Brandon Graham healthy, returning back to his 2017 self, where he gets, between, I'd say, 8 to 9.5 sacks. I think that the Eagles are sitting pretty. You get him to get back to his 2017 self. You get Derek Barnett to progress like he should as a first-round pick. This defense will be tremendous, okay? The Eagles are a defense who plays better with the lead. They play better with the lead. They get pressure on the quarterback, and that's really when they eat, when they can just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, okay? And a lot of times you see teams, to avoid that pressure, they like to go to the short passing games, which means less big plays down the field. But if you look at last year, the Eagles really didn't do that good, okay? They didn't do that good. They didn't keep leads in the fourth quarter well. You think about games like the Carolina game, the Tennessee game, where they had a 4th and 15 with the lead in overtime, and they gave it up, okay? A lot of this, was because the Eagles weren't getting pressure on the quarterback. They weren't getting to the quarterbacks like they were in 2017. And I think a lot of it was that Brandon Graham wasn't healthy. Derek Barnett was injured. Michael Bennett played great. He did his thing. Fletcher Cox did his thing. But it wasn't enough. And this year, if we could get Derek Barnett to be a double-digit sack guy, which I expect, and Brandon Graham to be healthy and like his 2017 self, this defense could be, I think, top 5. I think they have the potential and the talent if the young secondary develops. But the best thing for a young secondary to develop is to have a good pass rush in front of them. It makes their job much easier. So when I look at this defense, the most important guys going into 2019 on defense, besides Fletcher Cox and Malcolm Jenkins, is Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham. They have to have big years. So that's my thoughts on it. Desean Jackson, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, very important for the Eagles this year. I think those guys have to have good season, and I think they're the most important guys on offense and defense other than the stars. Let me know what you think. I'm curious. With that said, take care. Talk to you later. Don't be a dingbat.